like 10 people in their underwear in a basement eating pizza. No, seriously, like building games that they want to play. Like that was the
Absolutely.
goal. We
Yeah.
lost it. So our industry, imagine it being a whole, right? Like last year or 2 years ago, we had a game industry, and then suddenly in 4 years, it gets cut in half. That's a big deal. I think it will get cut in half with more user-generated content. It's like a giant puzzle, right? Like
Yep.
rigging.
Yep.
It's like, it's really trying to see what pieces fit, and then also it's like a tool belt. Like you need to learn rigging to see what you can apply to the problem, right? And for me, like I've never seen it like that. I've always seen the bigger picture. Like I want to enjoy what I'm building. I want to be invested in what I'm building. I want to make sure with the time that I'm spending is on something that I really enjoy. They're like, hey, we need to start streamlining, and we can't just manually do rigs by hand, so we need to automate everything. So from there, also, how about that? Even programming. It was hard for me to even learn programming because I didn't go to programming school. Or this boss or whatever, and you have to figure out how to put those, your utility belt together to get around things. And I use that in not just playing video games, but even in real life. It is really about like your knowledge of what you have, what resources you have, and what your goal is and how you get there. I'm building.
Hey, thanks for accepting my invite. I really appreciate it. This is just episode 2 right now. I haven't even finished episode 1 from the editing and everything else.
Everything looks good though. Like your setup and everything looks pretty good.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I do. I really try to do the to make things look professional with the budget that I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, a lot of it's just figuring it out as you're doing it as well. So what I do, just a little bit about me. I think you've known a little bit about me. I do streaming since 6 weeks, where I document my learning, becoming a technical artist, basically. So far, I've been attending Double Jump Academy's workshop. It was pretty good, where we are creating some HDAs for Unreal. But I've always been curious about technical animation, and I have like billion question about it. So it's really nice to have you here.
I do both. So I also do performance profiling and materials and optimizations and everything. So
wow. So you're like a pure generalist.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I do sit a lot of tech art. So even in Prey, I would say 90% of my job was probably programming and setting up the art pipeline and framework, making sure everything scales. So even our facial animation system, we had to do localization for 11 different languages.
Wow.
So yeah, we just have to build everything to scale to make sure we can get everything out the door on time. But that's really my main goal, right? To get all the pieces together to make sure everyone can move as fast as they can. So
isn't that a role of a principal generalist artist, I think?
No, I don't know. I do code, so I streamline the stuff, the workflows. So like I said, 90% of what I do is Python and code related. So I'm not just doing the work or showing the workflow or even just building guidelines. I'm actually building, and streamlining the framework with tools and whatnot. So the goal is hey, I can export a character with one button or batch export thousands of animations and being able to change the base joints or naming of joints or whatever. Technically anything in a game, you need to make sure that you can solve, because if you have to do it manually, imagine if you have a game skeleton and you add or append other joints or break the hierarchy, you actually have to open up every single Maya file or animation file and manually export them, right? So we build tools to batch export them, right? So it's like a click of a button. It's really about saving time and efficiency. So
yeah, that's purely the role, right? The role of a technical artist: create the tools to make everybody's life easier. Technical artist or a generalist artist is most likely it's a really weird combination of roles. It's like a firefighter. You put down fires, right? You solve problems. But also it's like a security guard in a way. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. So a lot of generalists actually back in the day, it must have been 15 or 20 years ago, before I was in the industry, everyone that was a generalist, when I got into the industry, they either became a visual effects artist or a technical artist. So anyone that was generalist, they started going down those two branches in the game industry. So they kind of chose I'm a visual effects person, because they were able to do a lot. Being an effects person, you are a type of technical artist. You have to do a lot of things between physics and textures and art and even programming in some senses. So
yeah, I mean, just imagine if you're making destruction. A destruction system is not as simple as I don't know, just click a button. Perform, maybe in Unreal.
I mean, you're right, right? It has to like look good. It has to scale. It has to run smoothly. So for to be an effects artist, like you should have to, or you should learn some of the performance profiling stuff. That's usually a part of it.
So let's talk a little bit about how you became a technical artist, so to speak. Let us, because I think when you hear the role technical artist, I always feel like it's how to say, it's not a presentable work like performance art, for example. You go on a stage,
Yeah, it's very easy to explain because it's so broad.
Yeah,
Maybe,
it's also
right?
so broad. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, a little bit about me real quick, and then we can talk about like even the different branches. Like I started way back in the day. I think it was like 2008. I went to Vancouver Film School. Right. I mean, that's all the way back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get into modeling, but at that time I was doing everything. You know, like I was already doing animation and effects and things, and I was trying to find my path. And when I was in school, I started rigging everyone's characters.
Wow.
Like everyone. So I realized like I was actually a better rigger and a technical person, but I still loved character art, and that was actually my goal, was to be a character modeler. And then after school, my first job is actually at Armature Studio. They hired me as a technical rigger. So I applied for their character position, and they said, "Hey, you have really cool robots and rigging experience. Do you want to come on as our rigger?" So that was my me getting my foot in the door, which is great. So that's my first pretty big game studio, because those guys were from old Nintendo, I guess, like yeah. I mean, anyway.
Wow. So basically, you started. You found yourself in a position where you were learning a lot of things, right? And as you were going, you kind of figured out that rigging not only is a valuable skill needed, right? In school, like you said, they were asking you to rig their characters, but also you will find out that you were enjoying it, correct?
Yeah, both, absolutely. So, I mean, because it has to do with like realize like even tools are boring. When people look at tools and look at tool demo reels, they are boring. But I try to spice it up because I feel like everything is like a part of. They're all touching each other, So having fun building tools, you should, like you should figure out how to even tell stories so you can see how the user should be using the tools, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so many ways that you can use technology to also show storytelling, and just like products and showcasing things. It just really helps. So.
How did your goals change? Take us a little bit through your life. That's something I have my guests talk about a little bit. So I ask them to take us on their path through their 20s, 30s, and so on. Yeah. I don't know if you are in your 30s. You sound very young, but take us through 17 upwards, basically.
Yeah, no, I mean, I started young. So when I went to Vancouver Film School, I was like 18 or 19. So I was one of the youngest kids in the school.
Yeah.
So when I left, I actually in Canada, this is funny. I was able to drink at 19, and then I came back to the U.S. because it's only a 1-year school, and I was unable to go to bars or drink.
Oh no!
So I was like 20 years old, and I was like, oh no, things are totally different. But I mean, that was a fun experience. But like I was telling you before, like my goal at the beginning when I was a kid, I just wanted to make films or work for Disney or even do music videos. Like I used to listen to rock bands like Korn, and they had really, really awesome storytelling. Like I said, like it's almost like Love, Death, and Robots, where it's like 4 to 5 minutes. That's what a music video is for me.
Yeah.
4 to 5 minutes, good nugget of storytelling. So that is what I really wanted to do. Like I like to kind of jump around. I like to do lots of creative film ideas. But like I was saying, like that was my goal when I was a kid, and I went to Vancouver Film School, and it hasn't changed. I went to film school to build films, and then when I left, I became a technical rigger in the game industry. I actually wanted to go into film. My main goal was actually to work for Blur, Blizzard. Those two studios were the cinematic team. So I kind of fell into like video games. And a lot of that was because, like, even my character art stuff, it wasn't cinematic. It wasn't hitting that quality. But from the technical standpoint, it was good for, like, video games. And especially at the time where I jumped on video games right at the perfect time, because video games were a lot harder to make than film. And now now there's, like, a bridge between the gap, right? Where Unreal 5 is now allowing, developers to do film or to do, video games and everything. Technically, like my rigs, they're all the same. I can now make film or video game rigs, and they're now, like the quality is about the same. Like look at face rigs, right?
Yeah.
Like before, only films could really get this high fidelity, but now we can. So I had a great opportunity to stay in the video game industry, and I worked for AAA for a while. We can get into that.
So you're basically like the perfect example of playing your cards right, and also combining all of that with luck, right?
No, there's no one stopping. So how about this? Like I said, I am now. I'm going to be 36 years old.
Yeah.
I started when I was 19. I feel like I haven't stopped. The honest truth is no.
Okay.
You keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And I mean, I've been laid off. I've been laid off when I was younger from 2 studios within, I think, 30 days. I got another job at a company. I went there to Austin. I was there for 2 weeks, and then suddenly they lost their project. So things happen in the industry, and you can't just say, oh, no, like I'm just looking for a job. No, go make another demo reel. Go, like, you have to, like, really inspire yourself to just keep going, and you can't rely on the system,
Dude, yeah. I love
everything
that you
changes.
said that.
The landscape changes. Like even now, things are completely different. I mean, we all know from, obviously AI and the way AAA and corporate and everything is heading towards now, right?
Yeah.
Things are completely different. Even with AA game development, where everything's now being built mostly like remote, and we're going back to our roots of game development with these smaller studios where they're trying to make fun games. Like that's their goal. There's no other agenda where like they're definitely going back to the roots with
I love that
teams.
you said going back to the root, because that's exactly how video games started. Mario was not made.
And I always say it's like 10 people in their underwear in a basement eating pizza. No, seriously, like building games that they want to play. Like that was the goal.
Yeah.
We lost it. So working in AAA, when you work for a big studio and there's 200 people, the issue is you do kind of become a number, right? Depending on what studio you go for. And you do kind of just go like, I'm a character artist.
Yeah.
And you just go for the paycheck and you kind of do that thing. And for me, like I've never seen it like that. I've always seen the bigger picture. Like I want to enjoy what I'm building. I want to be invested in what I'm building. I want to make sure with the time that I'm spending is on something that I really enjoy. So when you do that and the team feels that energy and you bring everyone together, that's where the magic happens. Like that's pretty much how Arkane for Prey, like that's how it was. Like the whole team was together. We were about towards the end of the game is like I think 60 people or so. So it was a very small team. There's only 2 other technical artists. So altogether there's 3 tech artists on Prey between tech animation and tech art. So like if you bring people that really believe in what they're building together, like it will happen, and you just have to keep looking at the bigger picture, and it's hard because like I said, when you have 200 people, some people kind of see like they're maybe just rigging or just modeling or just effects. And it's not about that. It's like, oh, look at the game and how can you bring a bit bigger and better experience, and every department brings that. And if everyone's working together, you'll get the best product, or at least a product that at least that team will enjoy to play, So I like to build games that I enjoy playing. Like I could go work for Barbie or whatever, but those things don't interest me, so my heart wouldn't be in it. So, yeah.
And that's fine, I think you touched on so many points, man. I really appreciate you for talking about those things. One of the main things. Go ahead.
Oh no, I just say like even just like teamwork and transparency, like that's the big reason why we started Loading Studios. Like everyone on the team knows everything that's happening at all times. Like we're all communicating. We're a small team though. We're only 6 people. We're all remote, but we all jump in. We're all communicating, but like from money to everything, from A to Z, we're all doing it together. So,
I mean, if you feel like you would like to introduce, is it called Loading, right?
Yeah, Loading Studios.
Yeah, please let us know a little bit more about that, because I think I haven't got that it was a small studio. I always thought like, okay, this is a... And by the way, it's such a... I love your icon.
What you're looking at now, that's my website. But I actually have Loading Studios where we do a lot of other stuff, where it's technical art services, and we provide a tool suite where we're automating face rigging and other things for AAA development, but we're making it cheap. So for indie developers, it's $10 a month, where it's $120 a year. Obviously, pricing may change.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's cheap. I think comes out to like 33 cents a day for these tools, which you can quickly scale your content. So that's what I've been doing too. Like a lot of
Wow.
my days have been just getting up, programming, communicating with clients, communicating with, other studios and doing contract work. So
How long
my
have you
days
been doing
already,
loading so far?
we're a little over 2 years now, full time.
Wow. Full time.
We've been
So,
enjoying it.
all
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Business going well, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So how about this? I feel like we're snowballing. I mean, we can talk
Yeah.
about that too.
Yeah. Tell me.
But
Tell me. I'm all in, man.
yeah. So how about this? I've been in AAA for a long time, right? Like that's been most of my career. So
Yeah.
once I left Vancouver Film School, I went to Armature. Then I went to Volition for a while, where met my business partner.
Mm-hmm.
His name's Ryan Majika.
Mm-hmm.
He's a pretty cool guy. We've been working together now for over 13 years. So he's now here in Austin. So we met all the way back making Saints Row 4. Yeah, we
Wow.
were on Saints Row 4.
Okay.
And then we left Volition. I went to Arkane Studios for Prey for 4 years as the lead tech artist. And then I went to Rooster Teeth as the lead, and then Aspire. I worked at 2K for Cloud Chamber for was it BioShock. So I've
Wow.
been around.
Yeah.
But the reason why I left AAA was actually because I couldn't develop my own stuff. So I love AAA, and I really enjoy everything how much I've learned through AAA.
Absolutely.
Especially like people do it because it's stability. It definitely helps, and you get to work on a cool project for like 3 or 4 years, knowing it's
Yeah.
funded, and I
Yeah.
think that's great. But not being able to create your own art and a company being able to own your stuff that you want to do on the side, things that inspire you, I think is wrong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's why everyone at the studio, they know that they can do whatever they want. Even our tools, we give them our tools and we say, you can even use this to go do side contract or go do whatever. We don't care. Just don't let it, don't let it affect work. But we don't care what people do. Like go make games, have fun on the
Absolutely.
side.
Yeah.
When you go to corporate and you sign those NDAs, they own everything, all your IPs.
Yep.
I've worked for a company where they own music, they own art, they own technology. They have everything written down to the point where you really can't do anything except work for that company, And
Yeah.
again, I don't believe in corporations owning, creativity or unless it's their own IPs, and that's fine. But I do understand the conflict. But we're artists, so as artists, I'm not a businessman. So I just care a lot less about money and them wanting things that aren't really theirs.
Can you walk us
But that
through
is
a
why
little bit through the idea of owning the solution that you created? So, for example, say you worked in a company XYZ, whatever, right? And you've been creating a rig, the facial rig that you've been so passionate about for the past 2 years. What does owning that property mean? Can you walk us through that? Because saying it is something, but explaining it is something else. Just let me know a bit about the frustration behind,
So when you sign up to a company, like I said, a corporate company, there's a lot of not just NDAs, but there's the contracts that you're signing, and in those contracts, you're not supposed to, like I said, you're not supposed to be working on other technologies and stuff, but you have a place where you can label your existing IPs. So once you're signing for a job, you should put down all of your IPs, all of your technology, and you should have examples and information of exactly what you're building. So like you said, face rig. I build face rig technologies that automate X, Y, and Z, or the meta-human face rig to this. Now, that will allow you to hold on to your technology, but if you don't let them know that you already have pre-existing technology and you work for the company, and then suddenly it becomes a big thing a year later, they will try to possibly take it because you didn't write that IP down. So it just gets really sketchy on if you do want to create your own intellectual property, you need sign-off. You need to write it down, and it's all in the contracts. But that's almost every studio I've worked for, by the way. So it's not just one AAA studio. It's not three. It's almost every single AAA. Yeah, because corporate. I mean, they have their own goals and agendas, and I get it. They want to make money and do these things. But I think that's a dying thing, and that's why I was telling you. I think we're realizing, like, why do we make video games? Oh yeah. We want to make art. We want to have fun. Okay, cool. We're just humans, like in a room, just trying to make fun video games. Like it's nothing too serious. But you should be able to express yourself doing music and art and technology on the side if it's not directly competing or conflicting, and I think like that's the big thing. Like, how about this? If we're a studio that's making face rig technology and then you're doing face rig technology, yeah, there could be a conflict, but you should probably solve that at the beginning, like in a lot
also
of those things.
but also the fact that all, what is it called, all waves or all tides raise all boats, like this idea of saying that this facial rig solution is mine and mine only is, in my opinion, and that's my opinion, so dumb, because you can't exclusively behold the knowledge behind creating a tool like that. You just can't. Like, I would argue anyone can go and learn, invest 5 years and recreate the exact same tool. It's like Maya and Blender. It's the same, it's a 3D software. One is completely for free, but is it really in the way of Maya? No. People are learning Blender. They're getting into the industry that way. It's just another way.
The good thing is that you can recreate. So the whole thing is, see, this is where it gets kind of weird, right? So if you had a pre-existing, let's say, tool set and you don't integrate it or use it, and all your source code stays locally on your own home computer, but you work for a corporation, you start rebuilding that same tool, and even though it's separated code, there could be conflict, though, because you have an existing technology and now you're building it for their company for them to possibly make money or to do whatever. And in the end, like, they're looking at the numbers or looking at they should be looking at the people, making the money, like the team. Like, for me, I'd rather want a badass dev team of, imagine 10 people and they get to do whatever they want and their heart's in it. I care more about that than us owning the technology that they have, because I think longevity, they would want to stay for a company if they know that they have the freedom to do things on the side.
So what do you think the issue here? Because for me, it sounds so much that, the corporate world existed prior to video games, right? So it's this novel thing, video games, and software development generally is novel still. So our job title, right, technical artist or generalist, is so novel, and the tools that we create are also very, very novel. No one had before maybe created the tools that you created, for example. So where do you think the issue here is when it comes to the corporate thinking, that they could not only own the technology but also kind of like own what you do with it?
So that's what I was saying before. If I created a face rigging system for one studio, I can leave legally and start from scratch and go to another studio and start rebuilding the same technology, as long as there's as long as I'm not taking anything, right? Like, it is okay to do that. But what I was saying is, it's like almost not okay when you have your own and it conflicts with that product, because to them, you're working at the company at the time. You're building possibly your side technology that competes or is possibly too similar to the product that you're building at work. So for them, it's almost like a direct compete, where to me, it's not. Like, a direct compete would be like, hey, what kind of games do you make? First-person shooters? Okay, are you directly building a game very similar to ours that's going to be taking the same, audience that we're trying to take, right? The last thing you want is make on your team is to build almost the same game and they launch around the same time as you, and like, I could see that being an issue. But outside of that scope, if it's technology or tools or art, or whatever you do, you should have the freedom to do that. So
all right, so how are you working now to change that with loading? Is there a plan? How is that different?
We're just super organic, and it's not just us. It's also other AA studios. Like, we've worked with a lot of AA studios. These smaller studios, about I'd say about 5 to 20 people. Count, sometimes up to 30. But they seem a lot more cool. Like, they're going back again to their roots. They don't care what people are doing. They just, everyone's heart is in it. So when I'm working with these teams, we're all building games. They care about the game, and some of them, they have podcasts on the side. They're doing other things. Some studios, you can't just run a podcast. You need to make sure, like sometimes you need to get sign off on things, because I'm just letting you know, like, at one time I was at ZeniMax for a while, and we couldn't really move like any type of technology, and anything that we've done, we had to get sign off. I had an e-commerce platform for animals, right? Had nothing to do with video games, but it was technology based, where it was a platform online, and we still had to get sign off on it, just to show you, because it's not just to do with games or art. It's about everything, technology. It's anything that, any IPs, I think, that people can really possibly own. You just need to really protect yourself. And that's what I'm getting at too. It's like, it's really about protecting yourself, because people will just sign contracts, go, cool, I'm working at my favorite top studio.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that is great, but just keep in mind, if you're someone like me, like, again, I'm now at a point in my life that I want to develop my own stuff. I don't want to just keep working for corporate so they own everything. So
Yeah.
I'm just now at a point where I want to invest in myself. So that's why we even started the studio. So literally we left AAA. My business partner left about 3 months after I did, and he came on full time. So it was us at the beginning. And then we just kept ramping up. We just kept getting more and more contracts. We used our network and everyone that we've already worked with before, a lot of our clients. So we were able to keep things moving for the last 2 years. So
Man, that's beautiful. I'm really happy that you've reached that conclusion. But yeah, I wanted to go back to the point where you said, yeah, I'm working at that whatever studio, my dream. But what would you advise people, or junior technical artists, to do and to be aware of before they embark on the journey?
Oh, just be aware of that. Like, if you have a game that you're working on, or an IP, like, definitely have it kind of established, and maybe a pitch deck or something, just some idea and information, just to go like, this is the game that I'm making on the side. It is a first person or open world X, Y, and Z that you can go and loot, just like some base stuff, just so you can protect your own IPs before getting into there.
Yeah.
But if you are new, or if you're junior or getting into the industry, it is great to learn from people. Like, when you go to AAA, again, it's all pros and cons. You have to weigh everything out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great things. Like I said, the pay is good. You get great benefits from AAA. You get to work with 100 smart people or 200 smart people that are around you.
Yeah.
You're not the only tech artist. There's now 5 tech artists that you can now learn from, and use them as resources. So going into AAA is like, for me, I wouldn't be the person I am now doing all these things without AAA experience. So I was able to like learn a lot, and now really invest into myself, and feel like if I went the other way, it would have been a very different journey. I wouldn't have been as technical. I wouldn't. Everything would have been more higher level. I wouldn't have been able to get my hands as like dirty on like really coding. Like, I was kind of pushed to do code. I think it was like 13 or 14 years ago, and now all I do is code.
Wow. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's to do with the industry. They're like, hey, we need to start streamlining, and we can't just manually do rigs by hand, so we need to automate everything. So from there, also, how about that? Even programming. It was hard for me to even learn programming because I didn't go to programming school. But what I realize is you have to have a goal. Like, if you have a goal for programming, even if it's just like making boxes or 100 boxes, different sizes, having a goal helps you actually learn that process, the linear scripting process or programming process, where I think like that's where you need to start. So I tried learning programming the other way. I took programming classes. I did a few little courses, like just YouTube and maybe some things online for Python at the time. And I was just like, it's about numbers and variables, and I couldn't wrap my head around things.
Do the same.
And then I implemented it into Maya, and then I started doing basic stuff, and I started doing Python and Maya, and then it gave me a reason, or a more of an understanding on where and how to utilize it, right?
Yeah.
So just doing programming classes, it still didn't really click in my brain until I started using code for video games. Then it was like, oh, I got it now. Now we can do math and whatever, anything.
I mean, isn't it object specific, right? The type of programming that you work with, right? It's called object specific, or object oriented. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I build full pipelines and frameworks. So yeah, we do whatever programming, like any API and any DCC program. I can jump into any of them as long as they have code, like an API. We can do anything. We can do a lot. So
you're truly a math magician, so to speak.
Well, yeah, with math and programming, like, we do a lot of stuff, even on Unreal. We do Unreal tools, so we can even start building similar tools that we have in Maya into Unreal. But everything's there. All the pieces are there. So my job now is really just bridging all the pieces together. But there's a lot of smart people out there that have already given us this technology and given us this power. But it's like, oh, now you can bridge these things together that we couldn't do before. Like even having maybe your face drive a vehicle. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, now you can grab your facial tech and say, when I open my mouth, drive the vehicle more, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
Use your jaw left and right. So there's so many ways. Like I said, it's a tool belt. Yeah, you can do it, right?
Yeah,
so you
I'm
can
trying it.
And then your lights, maybe you blink and the lights turn on and off, or your windshield wipers. And I'm just saying, like that's an example right there of like using creativity. So it's grabbing technology and grabbing creativity and merging the two. And that's what I enjoy doing. I'm not a programmer, and I'm not just a creative person. I'm in between. I like to
Yeah.
really bridge the gap between the two. Like, where's the cool tech for me to get the coolest, output? So,
What is the coolest thing that you created, in your opinion?
coolest thing I've created. Oh man, coolest thing that I've created. Oh man, I've created a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say like I've created a lot of efficient tools, like I said, facial pipelines, where we have, the designers would write any lines of dialogue and it would go through face effects or audio to face, and generate procedural facial animations,
Wow.
and then they get projected onto any character. So if you have an open world game and you have 10,000 characters, they all have to share the same facial rig, and or the same
Yeah.
blend shapes or the same whatever. So just being able to scale, I've always loved doing that. But I'd say like the favorite things or the best things that I've created, I'd say it's what I'm doing now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm working on a project called One of Us,
Okay.
and it's really about like I'm really inspired. My favorite game is System Shock 2, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love immersive games. That's why I worked on Prey. Huge System Shock fan.
Makes
We
sense,
worked
yeah.
on System Shock Remake.
Yeah.
So our studio Loading, yeah, we worked a little over a year with Night Dive, to help them finish the remake.
Awesome. Wow.
But yeah. But I would say,
yeah, One
the
of Us.
game
I
that
think you were
we're working
talking about One of Us.
Yeah, the One of Us. Yeah, it's like a fun thing where it's about like manifestation of a creature, like one of us, and
Yeah.
I think I'm really able to like grab everything I've done. Like this creature has like a lot of tentacles and heads and faces. I don't know. It's a creepy art piece and a short film that we're technically making. But I really enjoy the direction it's heading in. It's just we haven't had time to really wrap it up. So I'd love to show you. Actually, it's that creature. That creature that comes out, that whole weird tentacle head.
Yeah.
And it has like heads and pieces and bodies. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
the short that we're working on. But we have renders in Unreal, so we're a lot further along than what we're showing. But we just
Wow.
haven't had time because I've been the bottleneck. Right now we have a cool little creature that we'd love to showcase, but I haven't had time to rig it. So right now I'm just stuck between clients and work. But like if I had a choice, like I would work on that full time. It's closer to like Love, Death, and Robot short films. Like fun little immersive videos or even immersive experiences. It'd be fun to do a fun little base game where there's some really creepy creatures and you're trying to get out of a room or do something creative.
I
Something.
love the spirit, man. You really inspire me to keep going. Also, when you first started with saying, even if you got laid off, no, go ahead and keep working. So I wanted to ask you what fuels the fire for you.
Fuels the fire, man.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's always been like an uphill battle, in a lot of senses. Even for our studio, like we've been doing this for a long time, and it's totally cool. But we've gone for funding. We've talked to publishers. We've done it for a long time, and we're still doing it. We haven't given up, but it actually kind of fuels us because I think we still have to show that we can kind of do it on our own. And something that I'm learning is like, even if you have people that you've worked with that can raise money or funds or get a publishing job or whatever,
Yeah.
they might have a different network or they might know people, different than you, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And what I realize is like, we're not relying on people anymore, even publishing or funding or whatever. We're doing it ourselves. And that's why I realized, like, I came from corporate. So in my mind, when I first started this company, I was like, oh yeah, let's try raising some money. Let's try getting a publishing deal for one of our demos,
Yeah.
so that we have the funds to scale. But it hasn't worked out for us. And maybe because they can smell that I'm a developer, not a businessman,
Yeah.
Because it is, you can tell the difference when I'm talking to VC for us to sometimes raise that money. So again, that's why I just took a step back. It helped fuel us because I realized we have to do it ourselves. And to do it yourselves, you need a lot of energy. So we just launched our studio tools in January, February, March, April. I forgot, it's either February or April. I forgot when we actually launched them.
Okay.
But we had to do it ourselves. It took us 2 years to do it because we asked, we tried to raise some fund to do it within 6 months. We didn't, get those funds, but it took us a lot longer to get to where we had to get to, but we didn't stop. So the whole thing is like, if you decide to work on a project or a game or something that inspires you, try to figure out how to do it without those resources. Like, kind of see if you can do it with the team or whatever resources you have, so if let's just say you don't know art, right?
Yep.
Like lean on what you're good at and try to figure those things out. Instead of going like, oh, cool, I'm going to build a demo and I need, a $500,000 for this project to actually, go to completion. I don't think like that's the best way to do it. Again, that's how AAA does it, or a lot of other
Exactly.
studios where they just do those and they just raise money.
Yeah.
Again, it didn't work for us, right? Like we've been doing
Also,
this long
it's not the language of
Eating-
entrepreneurship, right? It's not the language.
Yeah.
The language of entrepreneurship is time, and who can support, or how can you support yourself during making that investment of time. It's purely time in the beginning, right?
Yeah. So, well, here's the thing though. Now we're 2 years into it. We just launched our tools. People are starting to pay for the subscription. And now, if things work out for us financially, why do we really need that funding and other things moving forward? So what I realize is like we're starting to get into a position where we make our own money, our own revenue, and now like we don't actually have to chase VCs or chase investment or worry about our studio getting shut down, right?
Yeah.
Because we're a small studio, we have low overhead. We figured out how to
Exactly.
bring in our own income,
Yeah.
and then we also monetize our skill set by selling our tool set. So that means now we have monthly income where we're not throwing people at the problem. We're just investing our own time into our tools and products,
Yeah.
just so that more people will jump on and technically subscribe.
If you would have
monetizing skill set,
theoretically, if you have let's say a 10% more of your budget, right? Even through sales and everything, what would be the first hire to do to have to get some of the boring work away so you could focus more into what you're doing right now? Or do you love all of it?
Well, I'll tell you this right now. Like, I am the bottleneck, so it is hard for us to work every day with our clients. I mean, like I said, like we still have client work that we have to do every day, and that's the issue. So
gotcha.
We would make a lot more money if let's say we had like even $100,000 for a 6-month investment, right?
Okay.
Let's say.
Yeah.
So that would give me enough time where I would focus fully on the tools and just keeping with the SaaS, the software as a service, and we'd just sell more, right? Like sell more of our tools. Where now we really don't have to work. Like there's less bottleneck because I don't actually have to spend 6 to 8 hour days every day doing contracts. I now get to invest all that time back into the company.
Exactly.
And like that is really what the goal is, or what we're wanting to do. But like I said, we're now starting to make money. We're already selling our tools. So hopefully we'll have enough money where we don't have to worry about that, and I can go full-time developing our own technology. So
okay,
and that will fund our projects. That is the goal. These tools are loading studio tools. The goal of that is to fund our own films, our own video games. And we already have two. If you go on our site, we have BioDrive that we've been working on. It was inspired by like GTA 2 and GTA 3.
So cool.
But it's all with zombies. So it's like an open world zombie game where you just kind of like,
awesome.
Jumping into cars, running them over, blowing them up. But it has the immersive aspect of like with gameplay. Where you can like grab turrets and grenades and, just like mix. It's like I said, everything's about your tool belt, not just like, your skill set, but the video games I like to work on, right? It's like how you mix like Prey or System Shock. It's like, hey, what is my tool belt? Okay, I have 3 bullets. I have 1 grenade. I have to get around this creature or this boss or whatever. And you have to figure out how to put those, your utility belt together to get around things. And I use that in not just playing video games, but even in real life. It is really about like your knowledge of what you have, what resources you have, and what your goal is and how you get there. Because I wouldn't like, even though I'm experienced, I'm not going to say, hey, I'm going to go build a feature-length film because that's out of my scope. It is much. So you need to figure out like, what is your tool belt? What are you really good at? And then how do you put those pieces together to get your product? Really lean on.
I think it's the beauty of video games that you could scale them a bit easier than, basically you can control the scope a bit easier than a movie. I kind of feel like that, unless you're a narrative designer and you know exactly what you're doing. But like you said, the game.
Don't know. Not just AAA. So even indie developers, I think, run into this where you have one idea and you're like, oh no, this would definitely make the game better. But that one idea, that one system might offset and change everything. And sometimes it might be for the good. It might be for good or for the negative.
Okay. I'm not sure if you still have time, but I have one more question.
Yeah. I'm here.
So technical art is, in my opinion, the least section in game art or in movies, whatever you decide, tutored. So there's not much courses and workshops in that section. Have you
I've been seeing a
considered?
few from I think some Blizzard guys. I've been seeing like advertisements popping up, and I've seen 2 of them already for tech art. Where it's new, so this just started happening.
Okay.
So it's funny saying it. So I think other people are starting to realize that there's a need for technical art education, which is
Exactly.
super awesome.
I think Double Jump Academy is one of the very early implementers for that. I don't work for them, but like the course that I'm attending right now is like, wow, I've been like actually structuring a course attendance like for a year where it could have cost me 8,000 euros around that budget. But like I found it all in 8 weeks program. So I wanted to ask you, since you're, it could be something that you would be interested in maybe like making educational content for within your website, maybe how would that idea sound to you right now?
Like I said, like if I wasn't already the bottleneck of the company, it's time, right? Time. Like if we had like I said, if we had funding for us to invest completely in our tools and technology, then like we'd do tutorials, we'd do videos. Like I would love to teach. Like I do enjoy teaching, so that's another big thing. And because actually I struggled in school, like even growing up. So
there you go.
The educational system, like if anything ever happened or if I ever ran into some money, like I would love to even evaluate just like kids' education in the way that we teach kids instead of just like sitting at a desk. And I mean, it's a whole nother conversation, but
of course,
like I think like we should be bringing people together as a team, like even, humans and kids, like we should all be solving problems together instead of just like isolating ourselves. And that's where I struggled, like my comprehension skills, like learning and understanding. I really struggled with, like my brain just couldn't really click in a lot of ways, but schools are set up for like one kind of kid,
exactly.
Really did struggle, so.
I also struggled.
So with education, that's why I would love to do something. I'd love to fix it. I'd love to fix not just like I said, not just kid education, but like even for 3D and education as a whole. That's why when people do reach out to me, I usually do help them, right? So I am busy. Exactly. I'm doing stuff. When people reach out, I try to help them whenever I can. So if I had more time to actually like do videos and post them, absolutely. Like does that inspire me? Yeah, I love doing this stuff. That's why I'm posting all the time. I love to show new stuff, new technology. And I even tell people my breakdowns. Like I'm not trying to hold on to information. Like even our face rigging technology on how we're snapping our face joint deltas. I even explain in some of the posts like exactly the math that we're doing. It's very basic math. It's just delta, just grabbing the relative position or the offset position of joints relative to vertex positions. But in the end, like the more transparent you are, the more.
I wanted to ask. If someone like me is interested in doing, let's say, procedural rigging or procedural animation, what is the first tool set to learn, in your opinion? Or 3 tool sets? 3. Let's go.
Yeah, so I would say there's like 4 main elements that are popping in my head. I could absolutely be wrong. I could be the worst tech artist in the world. I don't know. I would say one would be like start with the body, like just go through a base tutorial and learn base setups. Like find a good tutorial that shows FK and IK, maybe some basic stretch, squash and stretch, but do one body and don't even worry about the face. Just go from A to Z.
Yeah.
And the thing is with rigging, rigs, you feel like you're done and you'll send it to an animator. And then once an animator gets it, it's probably broken.
Yep.
So I realized if a rig is going to take a month, say 2 months, and say after a month, there's going to be probably another month of iteration, right? Or 2 weeks and 2 weeks of iteration. So I almost double my time even now I double it because there's still bugs and things break and animators might have some requests. So always give yourself some time. But I would say start with a body rig and then I did this way too late in my career, but learn to animate a bit. Like turn the character 180 degrees, get him to walk, get him to like do a basic animation of bouncing. And I realized that my rigs became 10 times better. When I was just rigging, it was more of a technical thing because a lot of times technical people start doing rigging because they are technical and they understand some of the aspects of it because a lot of people that are doing art, they don't want to dive in too deep. So the problem is they don't animate, or a lot of times tech animators don't animate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So first start with the body, then animate, right? And then once you're ready, like the face rig itself, depending on if you're utilizing an existing one, right?
Yeah.
So like there's the metahuman one if you're trying to reuse shapes or whatever, that's one direction. But if you're trying to build your own, it's just as complicated, if not more, than building a body. So do it in chunks so that you're not trying to do everything at once, because it can be a lot of pieces.
Yep.
So first get the body working, and then get the face, and then connect them, right?
Yeah.
Also learn just mechanical rigging, just to show like pistons are fun to do basic robots to show like you can really do like robotic and hard stuff, because like I said, that's more about like problem solving, and I really enjoy the mechanical stuff. And then like I said, so there's the body, the face rig, the mechanical, and then tentacles. I know it sounds super silly,
Okay.
but like tentacle rigs are you learn a lot throughout the process. You really learn about squash and stretch, and then how you can use curves and different deformers to move surfaces, right? So I think like that's another big one to kind of go through. And it is pretty simple, because technically you can make your tentacle, let's say it's a meter, and then your control rig, if you're able to pull, let's say that you can strain a whole bunch of joints on a curve and you pull it to 2 meters, it's twice the distance. So then you need to scale your joints twice the distance to take over for that arc length, right? The actual curve length to get from A to Z.
Okay.
So there's a lot of just fun things that you'll learn just going through those processes. But I think like doing some fun, different organic, thing that is not robotic, like I said, a tentacle or something that is really thinking outside the box, I think definitely helps. Because again, it just kind of gets your brain thinking. And once you're done doing a lot of these tasks, you build your tool belt. You're like, oh, cool, I built a curved thing on a tentacle. Now you can go do that on fingers or an arm. Like it's not really just for that one thing, but it's teaching you different techniques and different tools that you can utilize for your other rig builds.
That's true. Yeah, I think because you could use it in the end, you're working with polygons, right? You're building the bones on polygons.
Surfaces. Yeah. So however you want to bend it, like again, you can have different leg rigs or tentacle rigs, and then you start utilizing it. You can use it for hair, maybe. You have crazy hair, and you do a bunch of tentacle stuff, and then you can even have the hair act like tentacles or snakes, right? Like there's Medusa. There, bam, you know how to do a tentacle snake hair rig, all because you know how to set up a tentacle, right? But again, it's different than just, hey, here's Medusa, and you go, oh, cool, I've set up body rigs before, but I don't know how to do the hair, and you just add joints, it's FK, it might look kind of dull, right? You might want them to feel like snakes, where their center of gravity or their heads are kind of like moving separately. And to do that, you need to think as an animator first.
Exactly.
Right? Like, what is the goal? What do you want? But if you don't start there, then you're just adding maybe joints, and you send it to an animator, and they start animating, and they go, oh, I'm not able to get the poses that I need to. And after that week or 2 weeks of you rigging, it's either garbage, or you're gonna keep like adding more tools and tech on top of it to make it better. And in the end, I realized that the simpler the rig, the better the rig. It's really about the deformation. It's really about the output. So don't overcomplicate rigs. I mean, I've done it, right? I have a mechanical rig where I can automate everything, like tons of stuff when you lift the leg. And in the end, I had to remove a lot of the automation just so that the animator could actually manually control it, because it was just easier than to counter animate, right? So you definitely need to be careful of like counter animating things, even if it's like, oh, cool, look, you can move this controller and look at all the pieces move, and then the animator's like, yeah, but we don't want that for this shot, and you're like, yeah, but that's how the system works.
Trust me,
you just have to really think things through. Yeah,
it's pretty cool that. Automation in terms of animation is such a mind-boggling topic for me, because when I see a technical artist, for example, working on a task as such, when the studio tells you, oh, shit, we just realized that the doors are all smaller than the character. Can you just apply a feature that only happens right before the door, and that the character just ducks without any animation? I was like, how is that done? That's the first thing I'm like, how were they able to do that?
So it's funny that you're even talking about metrics for video games, because we all run into it. And sometimes everyone likes to blame everyone because it goes from character art to rigging to animation. And sometimes if you don't set your metrics, even just like, oh, this character can't walk through the door, and you have to go all the way back to rigging and say, okay, or modeling. You say, we need to make the character, a half a meter smaller, and then the rig has to be a half a meter smaller. And then like there's tons of work, right? To actually fix, instead of just adjusting possibly the door.
Exactly.
So I mean, Yeah, I mean, we've done that too many times, even in AAA. But we're at a point now when if you have a small team, and again, you're communicating, and you've known that, like you've struggled with it so many times, it's something that we look for. So even
Mm.
right now, where we're working on like One of Us, we're lining everything up in Maya. We have our creatures all inside of a scene with the human, with the doors. So any of your archetypes, I would definitely recommend in Unreal or whatever program you're using
Mm.
to always have a good layout of what are the sizes, what are the metrics, and what from characters to doors, from even props, because we've worked on games where it's like, oh cool, we just outsourced a whole bunch of cups to, a whole bunch of cup models, and then suddenly you see them near the character's hands and they're either huge or they're too little, and it's like, oh,
Mm.
like, so now we
Mm.
even throw sometimes cups in there. So it's worth having all of your assets,
Yeah.
to check your scale in there, because it is a pain in the ass to scale things, like even for rigging, to go into Maya and to scale your controllers down. Do you know what happens if you take a character usually and if you make him half the height?
The whole thing will break.
Well, so I can make rigs that scale, but the problem is if I tell my character now to move 1 meter,
Yeah.
even though it says 1 meter, it's actually half a meter, because when you shrink your character down, all the matrices for the controllers
Yeah.
are actually half the amount of the value, not the rotation, but the translation. So
Okay.
you can imagine how it would be harder for animators to solve when they have one rig that was created correct and one that was scaled. So now they're both the right scale, but one has values on it. One is at 0.5, half the amount. So then when I tell him to go 1 meter and I tell the other character to go 1 meter, the character that has the one-to-one, the one that hasn't been scaled, will actually move the 1 meter cleanly. The one that has been scaled to 0.5, half the amount, will actually go half the
Half the
the unit.
distance, right?
Yeah, half the distance, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can
Wow.
see that's an issue. So how do you solve that? And a lot of times that's why we build auto rigs, where you're better off rebuilding the rig to make sure that you don't have that skill inside the rig itself. But again,
Uh,
you have to pick and choose, right? So some games you're like, no, we don't have time for that. Like animators will just have to kind of deal with the half size. But the problem is, especially in video games, you're trying to sync things. You're trying to like interlock two characters at different scales, and a lot of times we use root bones to just like make sure, like, oh, his root is where his anchor joint is, and then they'll play animations relative. But a lot of times you want to know those values to make sure everything matches. So math becomes harder, especially in animation, once you add scale to some of the rigs. So that's something just to watch out for, where yes, it is great to make scalable rigs,
yeah.
but for video games you might want to still find a solution to clean that scale, to make sure that animators can grab their IK hand controllers and type in 10 units, and they actually move 10 units forward instead of half the distance or whatever.
Yeah, I believe that's for sure very important for the devs as well, because a lot of the game design is related to the units themselves, right? Yeah.
Correct.
This.
But you can imagine
Yeah. Go
when it
ahead.
goes through production,
Yeah.
they say, hey, like, what do you mean we can't scale the rig? And you can tell production, we can scale the rig, but here's what happens. You explain the problem, and then they say, okay, we got to rebuild the rig or clean up the rig, and that's another week or 2 weeks. But the whole thing is, like, when you talk to production and certain things in video games, these are the things that are missed. There's tons of them. This is just one little issue that you can run into, which a lot of us do. Just scaling, like, hey, I really like this bird character, but he should be maybe 10% smaller, 20% smaller.
Yeah.
So even at Arkane Studio, like, I would say the best thing that we did was, like, we just blocked in characters. We'd just quickly, like, get super rough meshes and just get them in the game. I'd add one joint, and then we'd shoot around.
Yeah.
So even like the mimics and certain objects, we would scale them in the engine, and there was no rigs. There was no actual logic, just one collision, one route,
Yeah.
just to make sure, hey, they can go under the doors, they can look right in the environment, or we can shoot them. Because even for the mimics at one time, we were like, okay, they're 5% smaller or 10% bigger, and we were trying to figure out the best scale, because you didn't want them too big or too little, because you want to make sure you can hit them, right?
Yeah.
So getting that in and without doing the rig side was the most important thing. It is like, oh, you guys have 10 archetypes, 10 different characters or creatures. Just block them out, block out the scale, get it in the editor. Don't just start building all these custom rigs unless you have an auto rigger, right? If you have a, like, there's advanced skeleton, right? There's a pretty good way to quickly set up your bipedal characters. I would definitely recommend, like, like you can whip in like a character, like a proxy character. So if someone needs like, let's say you have locomotion animations already, right? They can share with all your characters.
Yeah.
If you quickly add the same skeleton to all these archetypes, and you can quickly also see them walking around in the game, right? So the goal is less is more. Like, how can you quickly just see the entity moving around? Because to me, like I said, the bigger picture is gameplay. It's just like, is it fun? Is it at scale? Like, is does everything align?
Yeah, it's
but a
fun.
lot of times, like art kind of rolls, or they keep moving too fast. Like hey, we got the creature done. We're already doing the rig, and then designers get it in game, and they're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And it's like, oh, you guys already spent how much time? And that's pretty much what happens in AAA.
Yeah.
That is the AAA development process.
Oh, no.
You go forward and backwards. You go forward and backwards. But like I said, when you're working with like these smaller teams that have made video games for many years, we all kind of know this now. So we kind of work a bit smarter, I feel, or we try to work smarter, because we just don't have time, and we don't have 60 to 100 people to just like throw work at, right? It's like, no, we got 30 people. So whatever we do, it should be to scale. So even our systems, we should make smart decisions on if we have to fix it or remove it or change something, it should be able to scale correctly without us throwing people at the problem,
Also, maybe that's why it works a bit smoother, because you have less people. So you have to, coordinate a bit less, like less traffic.
Yeah, well,
imagine it like a street.
Even communication. Like if you have 3 or 4 riggers on a thing, and you have, 5 animators and 3 designers and whatever, communication gets hard, where, production is doing their best. Now their job is communication. So they go, hey, we're ready for the rigging, and they're talking about art, and, and sometimes things,
Also, how are you supposed to eliminate the chance of misunderstanding? Like because it will happen. What are the processes to pick that up before it happened too late? You know what I mean?
Again, it's really like leadership, I think, and communication. It is really getting standards, and that's why like our studio too, like we really do focus on setting up projects from the beginning, where naming convention is huge, because that's to do with your scalability. Like even with adding like damage or O1 or whatever it is, even thinking about like materials, like are you trying to monetize your game? Do you want this one skin to have 10 different materials and 10 different textures? If come up scalable naming convention solution, and you should have everything almost on paper. So most of the time I have almost everything on paper before I even start. So even when it comes down to folder structure, name conventions, I'll actually create a fake project and pretend I'm already creating mimics and things, but they're empty files, just so we can see how the scalability and how the Maya files and the FBX files and the Unreal files, how they all interlock. So you get to see and then you get to present it to the team. So it's really about that communication. It's about establishing guidelines and a framework, and then presenting it. But a lot of times no one wants that responsibility. Like, who's in charge of that, or who's in charge of the scaling the doors and the characters and all the metrics in the game? No one really owns that. So it's really about like either one, like I really do step up when it comes down to that, or sometimes you'll find a designer that will step up and say, hey, I want to have a whole metric zoo, right? We usually have our game zoos. And those are very important. But that's pretty much where you need to start. You really need to really think about what kind of game you're developing and what you need to scale, like the bigger picture. And then you need to start blocking those things in before you actually start doing production. Because everyone wants to show, probably even like investors or even publishers, like, hey, look at our demo. And it's like, yeah, you guys did it. Like, yeah, we can easily just start building a demo. But if you're not naming things correctly and you're just trying to get it to the next milestone, now you're hurting yourself on the next milestone, And in the end, a lot of games do run into that problem where they start nesting and they start building, like, they're like, oh, we need to do performance profiling, and they're at the end of the game. And it's like, no, you should be doing performance profiling at the beginning. When I'm building a game, I'm already thinking about performance and how I'm combining materials and textures to build the world before I start building it, right? But it all starts with the demo. So it's like, let artists have fun, like build your visual look, but then you should be able to take that demo or vertical slice and then find ways to optimize it, and then find ways to clean it. And then from there you say, cool, this is the demo of our game, or this is our vertical slice. Now the rest of the game, we just need to follow the structure, And obviously things will change, but at least it's a starting place where you're building guidelines,
it's almost like all based on communication, honestly, and also
you got it.
Expertise.
It's really what it is.
Yeah, man. Like in the job that I used to have, the main problem was communication. And it's like, who's gonna do it? Then like I step up and I'm like, I'm gonna do it, but then you're not allowed to because you're not like,
Correct.
I don't know,
Well, you
the
said
leader
two
or
things,
whatever.
communication, it's having experience in doing those things, but it does start with what you're saying. I've always stepped up. And
Yep.
even though it's uncomfortable because you don't know, a lot of times I'll say, I'll look into it. And it's not me saying I will get it done. It's me saying I will look into it. And I will try my hardest to look into it. And I found out I have found solutions to pretty much like all my problems because you try. Like, because there's not one way on doing something. Like, you have to try. You have to throw yourself at it and not be scared. It's just like you have to try 3 or 4 different things and then show production, say, here are the 4 different tests and here are the outcome. Like, here's what we can get out of it. And it's all about R&D. So it's about communicating, talking about what you need to do or what the problem is, and then testing a few things out and then bringing things to the table and saying, hey, team, there's not, because if you're just thinking of one solution, there might be a handful of other solutions. That's why just prepping the R&D stage or just thinking things through, or even maybe having 2 different naming conventions, and you show your team, here are the 2 naming conventions and here's why. This will give us X, Y, and Z, and this will give us X, Y, and Z.
Man.
And then in the end, you can kind of unify the team, you know?
You're talking like that. I'm like, wow, that would be the ideal studio or whatever that I would be working in. That's so cool.
It is hard.
Yeah.
But you can imagine, though, I'm not really bashing exactly in corporate, but you can imagine having 100 or 200 people that are now even remote, where it's even harder. Like, first of all, communication was already hard working at. So AAA games are already difficult when we work together. Yeah. Now they're even more difficult working remotely. Yeah. And now even with IT and everything, where everything is like even harder to really, work around. But in the end, games are there. I would say, like, corporate and remote work and IT and trying to bring everyone together with communication, it's hard. And that's why I think AA Studios, it's the new future, because it's going to be like smaller teams, lower overhead that can do bigger things because of technologies like Unreal, right?
And expertise as well.
I think, yeah. But there's no reason for like the big teams for every AAA studio. It makes sense for some games, but not all. Like, I think that's
actually never worked in a AAA before, and I've always preferred to be in the role of a generalist in a smaller studio, because I feel more important. You know what I mean? I feel like I could take on the role of different things at the same time. I hate to be put in a box. I don't know if you have the same thing as a generalist yourself. I just don't like to be the character artist or I want to be the generalist. That
is me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I also do tech art, because I was telling you before, like, I like to do a lot of things. Like I said, face rigging to optimization to shaders to whatever. So for me to be able to move around and wear many hats, and again, it's about building the game. I don't care about just tech art on a game. I care about the game. Yeah. And then I want to make the best tech art for the team. But again, it comes down to I want to love what I'm building in the first place.
But also, I think this skill makes us a better communicator, and maybe in some cases better leaders, right? Because we have empathy. We can empathize with the artists.
You need to be open to learn. Yeah. Right. So the problem is some people in the industry, they get to a point where they might not feel comfortable asking for help, especially, or if they're seniors and then suddenly there's a junior that knows, dude, I've juniors and mid-level people teaching me new stuff all the time, because there are new technologies and things happening, and they are sometimes like people are testing and trying new things that we haven't, and we have our old school ways. So what I did realize is it's like, even if you have a senior that has been doing character art for whatever, and you run into the same problem with metrics and they don't say a word because they don't care. Like, they're just, or not, I don't want to say they don't care. It's just like, they're just like hyper focused really on their discipline. Maybe again, they don't care about learning, or maybe they feel uncomfortable. But for me, I'm like very vulnerable, where I'm like, yeah, show me, like, I'll teach you stuff, teach me. And that's where the transparency is. And that's where communication is. So like, it should be pretty like, I don't know. Like,
I think we get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's the ultimate skill that we get. And whenever it comes to, like, for me, for example, like right now I'm learning Houdini, and something that I haven't touched yet. I was always scared of Houdini, but because I got the layoff, like, it was a tough layoff a couple of weeks ago, I was like, you know what, Jack, you have a lot of anger. Put all this thing into something positive. Jump into Houdini. You know what I mean? Just jump into the water. Who cares? Let's go.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I mean, that is it. Like, that's what fueled you. You know, like a lot of these things should be fueling us to keep pushing forward. You know. Yeah,
and just talking to people like you make me realize, okay, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one that is feeling this way. You know, even people like you, like, technical professional, like you're at the peak, right? You created novel solutions that maybe have never been there before. You worked with a huge number of people before, created solutions that also never been there before, and you still have the same, because we're all humans and we can all like relate to each other.
Well, yeah. Again, we're all doing this for me, not all. I mean, I was really, like I said, I was doing this for art and doing this. Like I didn't even know there was money or anything in this industry. I was telling my parents I'm going to film school. They're like, "Oh, good luck."
Good luck.
You know, I was able to do it. I got a loan. I went through the whole process. You know, but one thing I will say though, like the landscape, like I was telling you before, it's very different now. So even now, even though like I've been in the industry for so long, like it is getting to the point where everything is so disrupt now, like it might be hard for me to get a job, or it might start becoming a bit difficult for me to even get into certain areas in the game industry because of everything happening where from publishing and corporate, like it is getting harder. So I would say too, because you even did say time, and I was like, it's not really about time. But yeah, when I was getting in the game industry, it was about like tech art and people, and like we were the problem. We were the solution to the problem. But now it's AI is the solution to the problem. And a lot of those investment in things a lot of those resources are going to different technologies instead of people than that. So what I'm saying is not even the businesses. They don't know, like you're saying, right? They don't know exactly how they're going to utilize or use AI. What I'm saying is it's VCs and investors. So to make video games, we need publishers and we need money, investors. Like that's how a lot of these companies have been running. Right? So imagine a VC, these investors that are willing to give $100 million, right, for maybe a big open world game or for whatever the hot thing is, right, another Fortnite, right, or another Roblox. That money is pretty much going towards AI. So what I'm saying is like the resources for these companies to even start these companies, a lot of those resources are going away. So I think there's just going to be a lot less studios and corporations unless they're going to start creating like little nuggets. Like imagine Sony, they would take maybe one studio and maybe branch out 3 little studios and say we need smaller projects, smaller teams, you know. But like I said, it's the main resources. So imagine all this investment in a lot of it in the US instead of it going towards, you know, even the metaverse or whatever. Like there's a hot spot for us at a time. That's all dried up, right? Our industry, imagine it being a whole, right? Like last year or 2 years ago, we had a game industry, and then suddenly in 4 years, it gets cut in half. That's a big deal. I think it will get cut in half with more user-generated content, you know. And
listen, man, it's a hell of a time to be an entrepreneur right now. More than anything. It sucks to be hired right now. I think that is what AI is going to shape things going forward, because each person has the ability to hire an AI or 10 of them. So you basically, each of us now are not people anymore. We are entities. We're almost like companies.
I feel that same way. But no, I mean, that is like, I mean, Blender, those companies, even Unreal, they are the future, you know, almost free is the future, you know, finding ways to monetize on your platform. That's the way to go. But to bring people on and for people to trust you, for people to enjoy your product, like that's number one. But again, software was built differently. So all these companies like Autodesk, they've been along for so long. They even like, I don't even know exactly like who works there, you know, like are they developers or are they not developers? Like I have no idea, but you do know Blender, they've got investment, I think, from Unreal. They had some partnership stuff. So they're all intertwined with the latest and newest technology. And it's not the software that's saying you need to utilize us, people. No, it's the people saying we want to use Blender. We want to use Unreal. And that's the difference. Yeah, no, it's been really good because I think like we're both, I see what you know, like you see different perspectives. You're trying to learn. Like again, that's what we're all doing here. And I think that we can both see a lot of similar perspectives because again, I'm here to learn. You're here to learn. We're both here to share information. So,
well, what is it? 1% better a day, I think. And you already seem to create it. Your worst case scenario, which is not a worst case. That's the same thing I do with the stream, even if no one is watching on the stream, and I stream Monday till Thursday till Friday. I'm like, you know what, Jack, you're learning. Just the act of commentating, because that's what helped me mostly. When I talk, and I love to talk. When I talk, I'm trying to say, okay, so I wonder why did we do this? And I try to find it and Google it, right? And sure enough, there are people watching. But even if no one is watching, I'm like, at the end of the day, the thing that makes me go to sleep easily is saying, you've learned something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you're getting better, right? Right.
Yeah.
So like whenever I'm posting stuff, I'm seeing what works and what doesn't. So the whole thing is like us doing what we're doing as creators, like we're constantly throwing things and being like, oh, this, like even timing. To me, what I realize is like timing is everything with posting, right? Even
Okay.
like what time you post and your video, you need to capture them in the first 3 seconds. So whenever you see any
Wow.
of my media or anything that I do, I have such a process, even the day. I make sure it's always on Saturday morning, which is weird because I've gone through all the stats. I've done everything. I've posted from Monday to Friday to Sunday to every day at any different times.
Okay.
And so far, the best time to post for me,
Yeah.
has been Saturday, where I get the most traction on all of my posts. It's Saturday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Where do you post?
LinkedIn. And it's
All right.
weird because LinkedIn was never a big thing. So
Yeah.
I've been on LinkedIn forever. But now
Yeah.
it is, because I know it sounds shitty. It's because people are also looking for jobs. So
Yeah.
people are now way more active than they ever were on LinkedIn, and now I actually have a way bigger following on LinkedIn than I ever had.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, whenever you look at our content, whenever I'm posting, the first 3 seconds, something weird's happening in the video, right? Like something funny or something to get their attention, and that's what I learned. And you don't learn that until you keep doing it. I realize less is more. And I never understood that until I started doing it. So I'll have, like, let's just say you want to show like the podcast.
Yeah.
You do a podcast 30 minutes or an hour, but then you take like the best 10 seconds or the best 20 seconds and you post that on LinkedIn, and then already it's funny, it's entertaining, it's cool, something I want to listen to. Then I click on the link and it's the whole show. Like, that's the way, like, these are the things that we're learning, because now I'm not just a tech artist. I'm a business guy. I'm a branding guy. I'm doing
Yep.
social media, I'm doing
Yep.
whatever it is. But this is it. We're, like you said, we're all human, so we're learning the different processes. Instead of one person being a brand manager, we are our own brand managers.
Yes. This is what the whole thing is shaping into. Seriously, we're all
Yep.
becoming entrepreneurs. We're all saying, "F this thing. I'm gonna do it on my own. I own it. I learn. I get better. No one can take that thing away from me." Right? All those type of things. Hey,
And it's not
man.
just money.
It's been great having you on. I must say, every time I look at your profile picture, it's loading, and I'm like, when will it ever be loaded?
Oh, yeah, man, we troll everyone with that. Like, even clients or whatever, they're always kind of thrown off.
But that would be cool. Like, if the company gets to a level where it's loaded, then you change the name and you call it loaded.
Oh, loading, yeah, reloading. No, that's what, if we get bought out, we'll start another company, reloading.
Reloading. Oh my god.
Still loading.
It's awesome.
Loading.
Man, I'm getting so hungry, and me and my wife are grabbing a pizza in like a couple of minutes. Listen, man, this was amazing. You have given me so much time, and I really love that. Thank you so much, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, let's keep in touch. I'll see you on LinkedIn. I'll be around. So
yeah,
thanks for having me, dude.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right, take care.
You too.
See you later. Bye.